welcome along to Neil Oliver Live on GBNews TV and on radio. Tonight I'll be asking what on earth is going on in Ukraine and, furthermore, what is likely to happen next. I'll be joined by the historian Dan Cruikshank to discuss the discovery of a huge Roman mosaic. It's been unearthed near the Shard in London. Plus, and this isn't a drill, we will have an award-nominated hero dog live in the studio. All of that and more coming up. But first, an update on the latest news.
Thank you, Neil. I'm Miranda Shunker. The top stories from the GB newsroom. An advisor to the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia's attack on Kyiv is not advancing and around 3,500 Russian soldiers have been killed or injured so far. Well, this evening, an air raid siren was heard in the capital as Russian forces pounded the city with artillery and cruise missiles. The mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko, has imposed a curfew and people have been warned to seek shelter. Earlier, President Zelensky said, "We will fight as long as it takes to liberate the country." He's urging the Russian people to tell Moscow now to back down.
I want absolutely everyone in Russia to hear me. Thousands of victims, hundreds of prisoners who simply can't understand why they were sent to Ukraine to die, to kill others. The sooner you tell your government the war must be stopped immediately, the more of your people will be kept alive. We can see that there are demonstrations of your citizens who are against the war. We need to end this war. We can live in peace, in global peace, in human peace.
Well, the UN Refugee Agency says more than 120,000 Ukrainians have now left the country since Russia began its invasion. Drone footage shows 30-kilometre-long queues of vehicles on Ukraine's border crossing as thousands try to enter Poland. The aid agency is also warning that fuel, cash and medical supplies are running low in parts of the country, which could drive up to 5 million people to flee abroad. Mark Kovalenko is with thousands of other Ukrainians waiting to cross into Poland. He says he must leave now because no one will come to help.
I want to survive because I have a family in Europe. So right now in Ukraine is a dangerous place because Russian forces come from more, and every day is strange time. USA and NATO don't help us, so we don't have any chosen. We must do this something for survival.
Well, back here, protests in support of Ukraine have been taking place in London, Edinburgh and Manchester. Eggs have been thrown at the Russian embassy in London, which is in touch with the British police after receiving phone threats. GB News' Inaya Falarin Iman was at the London protest.
We've heard people saying Putin out, we've heard stop the war. We've also heard a lot of people actually having placards when it's putting pressure on the international community to actually remove Russia from the SWIFT banking system. That is an international banking system that enables money to move around internationally quite easily, and I think that increasingly people are putting pressure on that to be one of the ways in which diplomatically people go further. And I think speaking to some of the people there is just this sense that not enough is being done, that there is violence and bloodshed going on, but actually there does seem to be a kind of resistance from the international community to do more.
Well, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has called for the expulsion of Russia's ambassador to the UK. It follows an announcement that the UK would impose personal sanctions on President Vladimir Putin and his foreign minister Sergei Lavrov. The US, Canada and the European Union are also doing the same. Well, meanwhile, President Zelensky has indicated that a decision has now been made to cut Russia off from SWIFT, the global interbank messaging system. Well, in other news, the Education Secretary, Nadeem Zahawi, has told GB News schools won't be allowed to close ever again.
I am determined that we continue to live with this virus. We'll have other variants, I'm certain of it, whether one in the summer and one in the autumn, but never again will we ask children to be out of school.
Well, footballer Christian Eriksen has made his return to the pitch for the first time since collapsing with a cardiac arrest at last year's Euro 2020. The Danish midfielder, fitted with a heart-starting device, joined the London club as a free agent in January. Both sets of fans at the Brentford Stadium applauded as he came on as a substitute in the 51st minute, with several players joining in as well. And just some breaking news to bring you now. Chelsea Russians owner Roman Abramovich says he's giving up the stewardship of the Premier League club. We'll bring you more on that in the next hour. But for now, on TV, online and DAB Plus radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Neil Oliver Live.
I'll be honest, I don't know what's happening in Ukraine. I don't understand it either. I ignore most of the mainstream media because I don't trust it. In the Wild West world of online, where I graze widely, it feels like there are as many different assessments and explanations of the situation in Ukraine as there are people with keyboards and phones. What I do know is that truth is rarer than gold and therefore harder to find. I also know that whatever Vladimir Putin is up to in Ukraine, the West must accept responsibility for a share of the blame for what is now being suffered and endured by ordinary people there. Whatever Putin has done, whatever NATO and the governments of the EU have done, and I say again, I don't feel anywhere close to knowing what's been going on and what is going on. Men, women and children are sheltering underground on European soil in 2022. Soldiers on both sides are dying. I do know that I don't trust Putin, but I don't trust our leaders or our government, or Europe's governments, or the governments of North America either. I certainly don't trust any of them to tell the truth. Crony capitalism, in one form or another, has seen governments and corporate entities, some corporates so vast they have more clout than nation states anyway, slide into bed together for the making of profits and the keeping of power. Too many people with fingers in each other's pies, amassing wealth at the expense of the well-being of the rest of us. I don't trust a lot of them as far as I could throw them. Here's the thing. What we have had in the West, some parts of the West at least, is even rarer than truth and gold. We have had freedom. Freedom as individuals to go about our lives without undue fear of the state. Most of the rest of the world is a damned mess and almost always has been. Most people who have lived and died for 200,000 years endured an existence we would find utterly intolerable, unbearable. All around the world, people have been and are ruled by despots, tyrants, gangsters and thugs. If you don't know this or don't believe me, just take a look around. Here in the West, for a few decades so exceptional as to be almost dreamlike, a handful of generations have known something else. Individual freedom, bodily autonomy, equality before the law, the promise of a fair trial so that the state may not punish a person without due process, the right to vote, tolerance of sexuality and religion. You might say it has not been perfect, and you would be right, but it has been immeasurably better and so much more than 99% of the species has known anywhere else and any when else. And yet, having been granted so much by our predecessors, what have we done with that treasure beyond price? The most recent of us committed the cardinal sin and took it all for granted. We actually had the temerity to think what we have had here for a few sweet generations is nothing more than the end product of the natural order of things, that individual freedom and protection from the excesses of the state and the rest just happens. Too many of us allowed ourselves to think all of this was natural and that regardless of our behaviour, it would greet us every morning like the rising sun. But I say again, if you want to see the natural order of things, look around at the rest of the world. To anyone who looks at what we have had here and says it's not good enough, I say, compared to where? Compared to what? In 1992, American political scientist Francis Fukuyama wrote The End of History and the Last Man. In it, he developed the thesis that liberal democracy, of the sort we have had in the West, was the inevitable endpoint of the evolution of all political ideologies. What we have had is better than anything else available, he wrote, and so, regardless of setbacks from time to time by strong men and despots and the like, Western liberal democracy was ultimately inevitable everywhere, however long it might take. Let's hope his prediction is ultimately true for our children, or at least our children's children. But if we want it to remain true for us in our time, we have to do a great deal more than take it for granted. We also have to do more than think our leaders are to be regarded as the good guys, just by dint of occupying positions of power here in the West. I grew up thinking we were the good guys. Whenever there was trouble in the world, I assumed our involvement and intervention there would be for the good of the people living under the yoke of whichever despotic regime. After the last couple of decades, and Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, to name but a few, I don't think that anymore. At the age of 55, I question it all, and I trust not a single one of them. I still think liberal democracy, in theory at least, offers the best chance of life for the most people. But is that even what we have here in the West anymore? During the past 2 years, I've watched leaders all over Europe, in Australia and New Zealand, in Canada, dropping the mask of liberal democracy and looking for all the world like the authoritarians we were taught to despise elsewhere. I've witnessed the advent all over the so-called liberal West of all manner of surveillance systems, the coming of digital IDs in all but name, the censoring of news and free speech, laws brought in by stealth to silence dissent, the routine use of propaganda and fear tactics by government, the implementation of mandates for medical procedures. And more I've wondered where the freedom went, or at least where the freedom might be going. We've not yet slipped all the way into totalitarianism of the sort that existed behind the Iron Curtain in the second half of the 20th century. Of course we haven't. But if you get the chance, you fight the fire while it's only smouldering and sparking, not once it's properly alight and roaring and too big to tackle. Such is our flagrant disregard, our seeming contempt for what we have had here. We've spent years now in what amounts to the mocking of our own civilization, our own history and culture. We've unlearned the basic science of biology to the point where to be a woman is now no more apparently than a state of mind. We teach our children that anyone born white is the product of original sin, never to be forgiven. Any figure from our past who lived and died without somehow obeying and displaying the ways of thinking of self-declared social and moral elites of this 21st century is to be cast post-mortem into perdition. And all the while we dance like marionettes to these new tunes. Here at home within the trembling, undermined towers of Western civilization, we turn a blind eye to all manner of horrors elsewhere. Not only do we turn a blind eye to the horror, we knowingly benefit from its products. How, I ask, can we sleep at night as lovers of freedom while our lives are made more comfortable, easier by the suffering of others? It might be one thing to accept we do not have it in our power to make better the lives of everyone in the world, but it's surely quite another to dare to call ourselves liberals while swapping our own freedom for mobile phones and throwaway clothes made by those living lives little better than slaves. China's President Xi Jinping was an honoured speaker at a gathering of the World Economic Forum, that unelected body beloved of our leaders, proudly declaring plans to reset our world. We in the West cannot consume the products of Xi's China fast enough. Our athletes attended his Olympics, just as our footballers will attend the World Cup in the Middle East state of Qatar, where thousands of Africans and others were worked to death building the necessary stadiums. But back to Xi's China, where the horror and depravity of what's being done there to the Uyghur Muslims must shame us all. Forced sterilisation to prevent there being a next generation of Uyghur people, tons of hair shorn from the heads of Uyghur women and packaged for sale as hair extensions, Uyghur men loaded in their thousands onto trains for transfer to distant camps and fates unknown. We so-called liberals and Democrats in the West know all of this, have known for years, and yet in the shadow of all of it we fret about pronouns, exonerate vandals who pulled down a statue and threw it in a river, let men compete in women's sport, browbeat our children about the evils of their ancestors and buy more phones powered by cobalt mined by child slaves in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau sent heavy horses to trample peaceful protesters. Then we watched him stand behind his podium and pledge support for the free people of Ukraine in their efforts to resist a tyrant. Our mainstream media has spent 2 years ignoring protests all over Europe in the face of lockdowns and mandated vaccines, and now somehow finds the time to lament Putin's suppression of peaceful protests in Russia. When did the word hypocrisy get so small and inadequate in the face of all this? Trudeau has taken control of the bank accounts of citizens who supported the truckers, a trick made easy by electronic cashless banking. Already in the West, as he has shown and is surely being watched eagerly elsewhere by others, a state displeased by a person's thinking and behaviour can make it all but impossible for that citizen to live. This should make all of us afraid, very afraid. Freedom to earn a living and to buy and sell without the intervention or interference of the state might be the most fundamental freedom of all. If they, whoever they are, stop us transacting with one another without their express permission, well, welcome to the Thunderdome. I said at the beginning that I don't know what's really going on in Ukraine. I don't know what's going on in the minds of Putin or any of the players in the latest great game. I also don't know if there are any good guys. I do know this has happened because here in the West we've stood fiddling while Rome burns. We've watched the erosion of our freedom. We've watched while the very ideas of liberal democracy are hollowed out, filleted to leave behind nothing but an empty shell. People like Putin and Trudeau and Ardern and Macron watch what others get away with, what works in the furthering of nefarious ends, and act accordingly. Putin is in part our fault, just as Trudeau and Ardern and Macron are our fault. We watch Ukraine and Russia, but at the same time we should watch what our leaders are up to here in the West. No doubt Ukraine is shaping up to be a tragedy for some poor souls. Maybe it won't end there. Any man's death diminishes me, wrote John Donne, for I am involved in mankind, and therefore never sent to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Now I've had my say, but on this show we do like to hear your opinions as well. So you can email and tell us what you think on GBViews at gbnews.uk, and you can tweet us as well at GBNews. If there's time, I'll read out some of your comments a little later in the show. Now, after the break, I'll be discussing the situation in Ukraine with my panel, plus asking what role, if any, could the US play. I'll put that question to the intelligence analyst Sebastian Gorka. But first of all, I'm joined here by Nick Tyrone, think tanker and analyst and commentator. We'll be coming to you for a conversation, but now we have to go to the break, and I'll see you shortly.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. Undoubtedly, the story focusing everyone's attention this week is the Russian invasion of neighbouring Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion forces are on the ground, planes are in the air and the missiles and bullets are flying. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has vowed to stand and fight alongside his people. His country's forces have been in action throughout, defending the homeland. It is, by any stretch, a fast-moving situation. for most of us, getting to the truth of what's going on there and why is a big ask. Now joining me to discuss this week's shocking events is journalist and writer Nick Tyrone. And later in the show, we will be joined by the broadcaster Ingrid Tarrant, but she's not with us at the moment. Nick, coming to you first of all.
Yep.
Simply, what is your reaction to so much that's happened this past week?
It's been immense. I mean, it's incredible. I've really been sort of addicted to the news. I think the first thing I would say, particularly reacting to what you said, is I think it's very easy to fall into this idea of, you know, the problems with the West, you know, Trudeau, etc. And I certainly wish we had better leaders throughout the West at the time that this has happened. And perhaps the weaknesses of the West and the weaknesses of the leadership of the West has provoked Putin into action. But I think we need to remember that Putin is, you know, he's a very horrible dictator. He's a kleptocrat. He is someone, if you want to talk about all of the values that you went through in your monologue, which I all agree with, you know, bodily autonomy, rule of law, you know, all that sort of stuff. You have to understand, I think Putin is such an existential threat to that. And his attack on Ukraine is a statement of intent. It's a way of saying the way we do things, and you were talking about China, and we have to remember Russia and China are, you know, I mean, it's a bit of a rocky relationship sometimes, but they're really allies in the sense that they're both very anti-West, they're both very anti-liberal democracy. And I just think we need to focus on who the enemy here is, and it is Putin.
I think what surprised me, though, and has surprised me, is that, you know, the story of Russia and her relationships with her neighbours has been, well, complicated and blood-soaked for longer than any of us can remember.
Yeah.
And to some extent, Russia, with Putin, it's doing a lot of what we expect.
Yeah.
What troubles me, for example, is that Canada is now behaving in the way that Canada is under Justin Trudeau, and that New Zealand is behaving and Australia is behaving.
Yeah.
You know, to some extent, you expect Russia to do Russia.
Well, yes.
But I did not expect the slide towards authoritarianism to happen so quickly, and in, of all places, for example, Canada.
Well, yes, but again, I think the problem is we can. I just feel like what's happening in Ukraine right now is an existential battle for the future of liberal democracy. I think we really have to look at it that way. If Putin can just roll into Ukraine, take it over, he can look at attacking, you know, say Estonia or Latvia, Lithuania. And also, I think we need to realize what people in Ukraine are thinking. You know, the GDP per capita of Ukraine is about $3,000 a year. And why wouldn't they look at somewhere like Estonia, which has much higher GDP per capita, 27,000, where people have much more freedoms, and they can look at that and say, well, the history of that is actually we've been sort of weighed down by Russia and Putin. So we want to get away from that. We desperately want to, and I think that's what we're seeing in Ukraine. They fought back so hard, and what we're seeing with Zelensky and all that, it's because they don't want this from Russia, and they will fight to the end.
Joining me now to offer his perspective is Sebastian Gorka, a military and intelligence analyst who's also served as Deputy Assistant to President Donald Trump. Hello, Seb. How are you? Thank you for joining me.
I'm delighted, Neil, and I want to thank you for, as ever, every single day, especially now during this catastrophic global situation, for the moral clarity of your show and especially your monologues.
Well, thank you, Seb. Can I ask you, first of all, if Mr. Trump was in the White House, what advice would you be offering in relation to the Ukraine situation?
Yeah, this is the question I get most often. If you know, what would you tell the White House now? And my answer is a sad one. We wouldn't be in this situation. You can't unbake this cake. After the disastrous surrender of Afghanistan, Putin, the KGB thug, took the measure of this feckless administration and decided to do what he's been wanting to do for 20 years. So the tragedy, Neil, of the current crisis is that lives are needlessly being lost that needn't have if President Trump was still president. If he were, these are the four things that I've been saying have to happen or should happen under whoever is the commander-in-chief. Number one, the energy resources of our nation have to be unleashed once more. Same in the UK. The fact that under the Biden administration, Russia has become the fourth highest importer of oil to America is absolutely moronic. It means he can blackmail nations like ours and others. That's the only thing he has, and he's using energy against us. When we were in the White House for the first time in the Republic's history, we were a net exporter of energy. We sold more energy than we burnt in this nation. That was shut down by Biden. Secondly, and I am so delighted to hear the deployment of almost 2,000 British troops to Estonia. We have to do this as Americans. We have tens of thousands of troops in places that are irrelevant, like Germany. They should all be redeployed to frontline NATO nations like the Baltic states, like Hungary, to provide a very clear tripwire that Putin, we are serious about the defense of the NATO territories. And then the last two things, which should have happened already, very easy to do in technical terms, we should be providing huge amounts of lethal aid to the government in Kyiv. We left $83 billion worth of weapons in Afghanistan when Biden surrendered. Could you imagine what Ukraine could do with a fraction of that support? So we don't deploy troops to a non-NATO nation, but we give them all the guns and munitions they need to fight for their own liberty. And lastly, make Putin bleed. Provide the ISR, the signals intelligence. We are peerless. We have more satellites than any other nation. Provide the intelligence capabilities and the targeting data sets to the Kyiv government that will make Russian troops bleed in occupied Ukraine, especially targeting their logistics and the communications networks. These are the four things that should happen now.
Seb, as you say, the West has made itself increasingly dependent on Russian gas and oil. Here in the UK and elsewhere, military capability has been cut and cut again for years. And here we've been preoccupied with COVID. We've spent time with Partygate and birthday cakes. We've picked pronouns. We've been wallowing in self-loathing. Has Putin looked on at this and watched a weakened, woke West and seized the opportunity?
Absolutely. When you have the most senior military officer in the world, Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, in uniform on the floor of the Senate, talk about, I don't know what critical race theory is, this bigoted ideology, but I think it's good that it's being taught at West Point, the most prestigious military academy in America. The wokeness is out of control. When we have recruiting, I've used this on my daily show here in America, on America First, Neil. When we have animated recruiting ads for the American Army about a female corporal who is so proud of representing her nation, just like her two mothers fought for LGBT rights across America. Putin looked at this and laughed and said, the West is lost, it is decadent, and the recruiting videos for the Russian army are about what? Testosterone-filled men who are ready to defeat and crush their enemies, which is the purpose of any military. The military isn't there to be diverse. It's not there to represent society. It is there to train with, to train for, and close with, and destroy the enemy. Putin took our measure, and then he deployed his troops. And this is the first time since the end of World War II that tanks are rolling down the streets of major cities in Europe, and it needn't have happened.
Would you predict that this will be contained within Ukraine, or can you envisage what's happening there spreading elsewhere into Europe?
So he's not a Machiavellian super strategist. He was a third-rate KGB officer. If you're a good KGB officer, you get deployed to London, to Paris, or to Washington. This guy, this bozo clown of a thug, was deployed to Berlin, and not West Berlin, Neil, mark you, East Berlin. They didn't even trust him to go to the West. So he's not a big brain. What he is a thug, and he's using classic Soviet tactics. It's fix bayonets and plunge the bayonet into the belly of your adversary until you feel steel, until you feel a resistance. If there is no resistance, you continue to expand and to send your troops into new areas. So he's actually a reactive actor, and it is up to us to make him feel steel, whether at the end of a Ukrainian bayonet or whether it's based upon the assistance we give them. He has to feel that he has bitten off more than he can chew. And one last point, if I may. The Ukrainians, and God bless the president, the Ukrainians will fight to the last breath in their body. I want to remind all your viewers, Neil, Stalin, the Russian dictator, murdered 8 million Ukrainians in the Holodomor famine. The Ukrainians will fight in the forests, in the mountains, in the cities, until there is no man left standing. We, if we believe in liberty, if we believe that they have a right to their independence, should support them in the war for their freedom.
Sebastian Gorka, military analyst and sometime Deputy Assistant to President Trump, thank you for making time for us this evening and bringing your illumination to a complicated subject. Thank you so much, and we'll speak again. Bye for now. Fascinating insight there. I saw you nodding along and smiling with recognition at some of what he was saying. What of Sebastian Gorka's comments struck truest for you?
I think he's absolutely right, and what we've seen over the last few days. I think Putin thought he'd just stroll in, and almost as if, and I think a lot of the soldiers as well, the Russian soldiers, thought almost as if like we would walk in and everybody would just lay down arms. There'll be almost like ticker tape, like we will be the liberators. And instead, actually, they found that people are going to, people are going to fight this. The Ukrainians are going to fight this to the end. And I think the way Zelensky's handled it, I mean, particularly in terms of the communications, the air war, if you like, he's become like an internet sort of celebrity. I mean, those videos he's done from Kyiv basically saying, I'm not leaving. The Americans said they could get me out. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to fight to the end. It's huge, and I just think Putin he's underestimated what he was up against. That's what I really think.
Where do you go for information that you trust in the midst of all this?
What I try to do is go to people who have either or are from the region or have worked there, and who I know I can feel reasonably safe that they aren't like Putin stooges. They aren't sort of, and they're usually easy to sort of, siphon out. Just, Ukrainians, even Russians, who just aren't in the pay of Putin, who don't have any attachment to the regime, who will say, hey, this is what's going on. I think that's probably your best source of news on this, as opposed to people who just have no connection to the place at all.
Do you feel that we are getting the whole story? Because reading around it, I sense that it's a much more complicated and nuanced story than perhaps we're being led to believe. And do you feel as if you know enough about key players like Volodymyr Zelensky? Do you feel you know enough about the history between Ukraine and Russia? The annexation of Crimea. And are the mainstream media giving us the whole picture, or do you get that sense as I do that we're being given a line that suits the government narrative best?
I actually don't particularly think that. I think that actually what we're getting is probably them trying to cobble together something based on an area of the world that lots of people that they have don't really know that much about. So it's a classic what you might get when something like this is suddenly rushed into the center of the stage and it's the biggest story in the world. And it's like, well, what does anyone know about this? And I think we're getting that. So you're getting some confused stuff. And yes, there are complexities around anything like this, but actually you can kind of reduce it to something simple, which is Putin's a dictator. He wants to enforce his will. He's very much wants to try and test the will of the West, and that's what he's done. And he thought that Ukraine would be a pushover. He's found already that that's not really the case. I think if you like Western liberal democracy, and actually that's your whole ethos, and that's what you care about, and you care about freedom of the individual, all that sort of stuff, I think you have to cheer on Zelensky and Ukraine.
Now, watching the situation in Ukraine with especially rapt attention is the Baltic state of Latvia. With a population of around 2 million people, Latvia is bordered by the neighbouring Baltic states of Lithuania and Estonia, and also by Belarus to the southeast and Russia to the east. Having declared independence after World War I, Latvia was invaded by both Germany and the Soviet Union during World War II. After the breakup of the Soviet Union, Latvia again declared independence in 1991. Joining me now to offer a Latvian perspective on events in Ukraine is their Minister of Defence, Dr. Artis Pabriks. Hello, Dr. Pabriks, thank you for joining me.
Good evening.
What is the atmosphere in Latvia now, given your proximity to all that's going on?
Well, we feel safe, but our hearts and minds are now with Ukrainians. And I must tell you, just in the last 24 hours, Latvian people donated about 1 million or more than 1 million euros, which we already now use to purchase more than 500 tons of fuel to ship to Ukraine. We are assisting with lethal aid, with weapons, with ammunition, with humanitarian assistance, because we believe that Ukrainians are fighting also for European freedom. Because if Kyiv falls, if Ukraine falls, this will change geopolitics and the pressure not only on us as a border countries, but also towards whole Europe, whole West, will actually dramatically increase. And, we have been trying to persuade our Western partners and allies and friends during the last decades, starting at least with Russian invasion in Georgia in 2008, that we have to change attitude. But it was not so easy, because frequently we were considered like a troublemaker, not capable to see a good thing in Moscow or in Putin. Unfortunately, we have been very correct, because everything what we told about 2008, what we told about 2014 invasion, what we told about current Russian annexation basically of Belarus, this is all what is happening. And for us, we still have vivid memories of Russian occupation, Soviet occupation. So our people are just like dedicated to defend our country, like we see also Ukrainians are defending our country. And we have some friends, even if we are not Slavic nation and we never joined ourselves European Union, we have friends in Kyiv. I have also some personal friends in Kyiv who are now as citizens simply defending their streets and their country at this moment. So it's very moving, and we have to do in the West everything we can at this moment to help assist Ukrainians to defend Russian aggression.
If Ukraine is overwhelmed, would you predict that the Baltic states, Latvia included, might fall under Putin's attention next? Or would you expect him to draw the line within Ukraine?
This guy will not stop, because from his aggressive tendencies depends also his power in Russia. So if Ukraine falls, yes, we are the first target, together with Poland, for instance, but you could see that he was also threatening, and Russian government was also threatening countries like Sweden and Finland. And West was left without guard for too long time. Particularly, I speak about Europeans here, because British, United Kingdom and United States, they still preserved this understanding of global politics and also of military. But certain continental countries, they simply were thinking that security is provided by God, or Americans will all the time take care of them. And now when we need, for instance, to give assistance to Ukrainians, we had a hard time for several days to convince some of countries really to send weapons, or to allow us also to send weapons to Ukraine. Now it has finally changed. So yes, but on the other hand, I really, with every hour, I believe that Ukraine will prevail, because you cannot put on knees nation of 14 million. And Putin is maybe a brilliant tactician, but he's a very bad strategist, and he managed to make an enemy into one of the most friendly nations for Russians, Ukrainians. They will not give up as long as they can as long as they can fight.
Now, around a quarter, I think I'm right in saying, of the population in Latvia are ethnic Russians. Due in no small part to movements of people under Stalin and the rest. Are there tensions within and between the population as a result of that, or not?
Not at all, actually, because yes, a Russian population in Latvia is made of different migration waves, and the largest one, of course, came here under the Soviet occupation. And I must say that there is a part of ethnic Russian population in Latvia who had and have probably some sympathy towards Russia as an empire, towards Putin. But now, in these days, we can see so many ethnic Latvians, ethnic Russians in Latvia actually being ashamed about Putin's activities. And I would say that we never felt insecure by having so many ethnic Russians in our country. But after Putin's invasion in Ukraine, you know, our country and our population will be even more consolidated, because only crazy people could support Putin at this moment. It's impossible anymore. So I think for some of these ethnic Russians, it will be a little bit kind of a hangover, but for most of them, they will be much closer to us at this moment.
To get to matters practical, how dependent is Latvia on Russian energy? You know, so much of Europe has become increasingly dependent on Russian gas. Where is Latvia in that story?
Well, yes, as far as gas imports, we have to import it from Russia. But at the same time, we are looking for alternatives also to import liquid gas. We are very much investing also in green energies. And we are blessed also with several hydropower stations. So in fact, as far as electricity, we can provide quite large amount ourselves, percentage-wise. And one of security guarantees as far as the gas in Latvia is that we have quite large underground storage capacities for gas, which are natural capacities, which sometimes are actually used by Russia itself, because they don't have such storage capacities next to the border. So in the short term, we don't have a problem with our energy, but in the longer term, I think we have to go until even constructing some smaller nuclear power stations or something similar, because of course, whole Europe must get away from the Russian gas. That's very clear. Maybe not 100%, but we must be capable to have alternative routes.
Now, Latvia is a member of the European Union, of NATO, of the United Nations. I think you said at the top that you feel safe. You know, do you feel that there's enough arms around you between yourselves and your neighbours?
Well, we are a small country next to the large bully. This is very clear. And weaponry across the border on Russian side has asymmetric percentage, so they have much more than we do. But first of all, we are spending now for our defense more than 2.3% from our GDP. Our army is highly motivated. We have a very good cooperation with our neighboring countries, Estonia, Lithuania, also with Poland. And we also have a small contingent at this moment of EFP group, so-called Forward Presence Group, which is compound of 10 nations. We also have American presence here at this moment. And I must tell, I was woken up and I did not sleep basically for the last 2 nights very much, but I was woken up when Russians invaded Ukraine shortly before 4 o'clock. And look, just a few hours later, already 1 battalion from United States airborne troops were landing in my country. So just reassuring that if something happens close to our borders, we are together with our allies. So we trust ourselves and we also trust our allies. Yes, we have shortages with certain equipment and certain capabilities, like for instance air defense systems, what Ukrainians are now missing too. But we hope that with our own possibilities and also with assistance of our allies, we will overcome that.
Dr. Artis Pabriks, Latvian Defence Minister, many thanks for your time. It's always so invaluable to hear insights from people on the ground and to get that, you know, that important up close and personal view. So thank you very much for your time and all the best.
Thank you for inviting.
And yours. After the break, I will be joined by Miles Routledge, the young man who's chosen to travel into Ukraine during this crisis.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. It's been hard, well, probably impossible really, for us all to escape the news from Ukraine this week. But one Brit is trying to do the exact opposite, you might say. Miles Routledge, a 22-year-old physics student, has a history of flying into war zones. In August last year, he was rescued from Kabul by British forces after flying to Afghanistan for a holiday shortly before it fell to the Taliban. Now he's in Ukraine, on a mission to help out, he says, but also for fun. His words, not mine. Miles joins me now, I believe from inside a place of some shelter. Where are you exactly, Miles? Hello?
Yes. So I'm in the capital right now of Kyiv, and I'm in a underground shelter in a hotel. We got the air raids warning come in, staff come knocking at my door, and we all ran down. So we're all just waiting it out, basically.
When and why did you decide to go in the direction of Kyiv and Ukraine at such a time?
Well, truthfully, at the beginning, I got a message from someone stating they had a grandfather who's unable to get out of the country, and he was having issues with getting medication across. From my trips in Afghanistan, I've managed to get the connections, and I've managed to get the medication to him. And now I'm here trying to patch people together and try and help out where I can, but also on my social media, share the stories of what's really going on, where the mainstream media, especially Russia, are manipulating the truths, lying, and I'm just trying to straighten things out. And to be honest, I think I'm good at this. I like what I do, and I'm enjoying myself here. And with the people smiling at the bomb shelter, we're getting along, and the Ukrainians, I think they appreciate what I'm trying to do.
Was it straightforward to get into Ukraine when you
Oh, definitely not. No. So I only got here about 1.5 days ago. So what I did was I woke up at 6 a.m. to several missed calls saying the wall's broken off. I booked a plane to Poland, and from there I got the last available train to the border. From there, I created my own company on Company House. I printed off a media badge. I spoke to some guards. They were completely fine with me. They liked what I was doing, and then they gladly let me in. But for some people, it's becoming a little bit more difficult to get in. So if you want to get into Ukraine now to help fight alongside the war, you'll have to get a bus in, sadly pay some bribes, which I don't agree with, and then walk your way up or hitchhike a taxi.
Would you say, Miles, that you're drawn? I think it almost goes without saying. Are you drawn to dangerous places? You know, I just have to say I am dumbfounded that someone would put themselves into a place of danger when you're not actually, you know, part of the armed forces. What's the attraction?
Truthfully, it's just rather interesting, to put it lightly, and I don't actually know. I was born in Birmingham, so I just kind of think I want to escape that area as much as I can, really. I think I enjoy this, and if I do some good along the way and help some people, alongside all my followers who see what I'm doing and agree with it, I think I have an overwhelming good. I can contribute to the people of Ukraine and same with other regions. And at the end of the day, I do enjoy it. When I get home sometimes from Ukraine, from Kazakhstan, from Afghanistan, from South Sudan, I just kind of sit there and the world feels a little bit too still.
Where you've been, you say you've only been there for a day and a half. Does it look like a war zone? Have you seen fighting?
Yes.
Have you heard fighting?
Yes. So I left Ukraine about 3 weeks ago. Well, sorry, I was in Ukraine for 3 weeks and I left about on Monday. Now I'm back again. So when I was first there, I was in Donetsk, about 1 kilometer from the front lines. And even then, in the central front line area, people were just going about their everyday lives, no issues, everything was calm, and that's why I left. When I come back a mere few days later, all hell's breaking loose, airway sirens going off, there's a curfew now at 5 p.m, so no one's allowed to leave the entire weekend. Soldiers are running around, police are going everywhere. People are crying on the phone, screaming. It's not the best situation. Truthfully, it is a war zone. I have seen fighting. I have heard gunfire and bombs going off in the distance, and they're only getting closer and closer.
Still in touch with family, with friends back home, and if so, what are they saying to your being there?
Yeah. Oh, well, I truthfully understand the argument of, you know, I don't want to worry my family or anything, but the good thing is I don't have family on my side. I've had a bad home life with my family and everything, and I've been estranged for 5 years. I've cut them off because, truthfully, they're not the best people. I don't want to speak too much about it, but I think the viewers at home can catch my drift. But if I don't have that liability and my friends think, you know, the same mindset as me, they think what I'm doing is good, they find it funny, they find it entertaining, and they kind of do the similar things because I've now built myself into that little army community. I think there's no issues with this. I think if I ever get a family of my own, hopefully one day, this will never happen again. But right now, this has become my career almost.
What preparations have you been able to make to get out? You know, if the situation becomes impossible by your estimation, what can you do to get away?
Not too much. I don't want to say I would do this, but bribes are always an option. Say £20 or £30, $50 will get you quite far in the country. I've also got a satellite phone with me, a satellite device, so I can navigate on that. I can tweet on it and also make phone calls and texts. I'm also in contact with the youngest MP equivalent in Ukraine. I've got some media contacts as well who are happy to look after me because I've looked after them in the past with tips and helping them regarding visas. I've also got in contact with some soldiers, so we're actually going to meet up tomorrow and do some shooting practice, and we're going to do some interviews with some locals and see how it's really going. We're also setting up compounds in northern and southern Ukraine, I'm allowed to say this, where if something goes wrong, we will basically build a little resistance movement and have a little bunker so we can harbour people who are trying to help the independence of Ukraine in the long run. So it's not guaranteed I can get out. You never know. I might die the next day. I might get bombed. But then again, it's the same when I cross a road or every other medial thing like a flight or something. I think the risks for me, I can accept them. I can understand most people can't at home. But the risk of not getting out of Ukraine and still doing good work here by handing out all the money, like the money I'm getting from this interview right now, it's all going to Ukrainian people tomorrow. And I'm proud to say I would rather do that than stay at home.
Miles, I said in the introduction that you had to be rescued from Kabul by British forces. You know, if that's the case, do you not appreciate that sometimes your being there is giving people who have other things to prioritise someone else to worry about that needn't be where you are?
See, I understand the argument, and to be fair, I would agree with you if that was the truth. But when I was in Kabul, what actually happened was I walked up to a safe house. I met some SAS soldiers. They invited me for a drink. They actually liked my story. We're still in contact to this day, and they're watching what's happening in Ukraine and all my other trips. And we basically just walked 400 meters with 400 other individuals out of Afghanistan. And I've promised as well, if anything happens here, I want no one to help me. If they're part of the British resources or they're going to take up any resources of their own. So I'm here on my own fruition, and whatever happens to me is on me, and that should be fine. So I'm not going to affect anyone. I think overall from here, I'm going to have an overwhelmingly positive impact, and that'll be the fun of it.
Miles Routledge, physics student and holidaymaker to the strangest places I can possibly imagine. We might be able to come back to you later, but at the moment I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to turn now to my panel, which has been doubled by the arrival of the talent broadcaster.
Hello.
Lovely to finally have you here.
Yeah.
You caught some of what that young man was saying. What's your gut reaction to a 22-year-old who goes to Ukraine at the moment?
Do you know, I would like to be there with him.
Really?
Yeah, I would. I do like to live on the edge. I've always been a little bit like that. I don't know, I have a bit of a... I somehow just sort of feel safe. I sense danger, but I do have, like... my mother always used to say, you have no sense of danger whatsoever, so I go leaping into the void.
You wouldn't bother that you were, not to find a point in it, just putting yourself in the way when other people have serious things to do, like fight.
But that is a fantastic point. That is very much a fantastic point. But as Miles was saying, it's down to him. He doesn't want people to do that. The truth is, you would help somebody in distress, whatever the situation. So if Miles was in trouble, or if I was in a place like that, and I was, somebody would obviously come and help. So yes, you could be compromising their own safety and their own position. I agree, but I think he's a bit of a one-off. I like that.
We're very different people, Ingrid.
Oh right. Oh, would you say? I'm surprised to hear that from you.
I think the professionals have enough to worry about with sightseers and getting in the way of the tanks. We'll have much more in the second half of the programme, and in particular, we will be meeting a fire rescue dog who's up for a very special award. All of that coming up.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. Later in the show, I will be spending some quality time with a hero fire rescue dog, and I'll be finding out about the discovery of the largest patch of Roman mosaic found in London for over half a century. But at the moment, I have to tell you it is 8 o'clock, and so time for an update on the latest news headlines.
Thank you, I'm Miranda Shunker with the latest from the GB newsroom. An advisor to the Ukrainian president says 3,500 Russian soldiers have been killed or injured so far. Well, this evening, an air raid siren was heard in the capital as Russian forces pounded the city with artillery and cruise missiles. The mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko, has imposed a curfew and people have been warned to seek shelter. Earlier, President Zelensky said, "We will fight as long as it takes to liberate the country." He also welcomed a move by European countries to cut Russia off from SWIFT, the global interbank messaging system used to assist with payments.
Our diplomats fought around the clock and inspirationally for all European countries to agree on a strong and fair decision to disconnect Russia from the international interbanking network. We have also this important victory. This is billions and billions of losses for Russia, a tangible price for this vile invasion of our country.
Well, the UN Refugee Agency says more than 120,000 Ukrainians have left the country since Russia began its invasion. Drone footage shows 30-kilometre-long queues of vehicles on Ukraine's border crossing as thousands try to enter Poland. The aid agency is also warning that fuel, cash and medical supplies are running low in parts of the country, which could drive up to 5 million people to flee abroad. Mark Kovalenko is with thousands of other Ukrainians waiting to cross into Poland.
I want to survive because I have a family in Europe. So right now in Ukraine is a dangerous place because Russian forces come from more, and every day is strange time. USA and NATO don't help us, so we don't have any chosen. We must do this something for survival.
Well, back home, protests in support of Ukraine have been taking place in London, Edinburgh and Manchester. Eggs have been thrown at the Russian embassy in London, which is in touch with the British police after receiving phone threats. Well, GB News' Inaya Falarin Iman was at the London protest.
We've heard people saying Putin out, we've heard stop the war. We've also heard a lot of people actually having placards when it's putting pressure on the international community to actually remove Russia from the SWIFT banking system. That is an international banking system that enables money to move around internationally quite easily, and I think that increasingly people are putting pressure on that to be one of the ways in which diplomatically people go further. And I think speaking to some of the people there is just this sense that not enough is being done, that there is violence and bloodshed going on, but actually there does seem to be a kind of resistance from the international community to do more.
Well, meanwhile, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has called for the expulsion of Russia's ambassador to the UK. It follows an announcement that the UK would impose personal sanctions on President Vladimir Putin and his Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The US, Canada and the European Union are doing the same. Chelsea Football Club's Russian owner Roman Abramovich says he's giving up stewardship of the Premier League side. Mr. Abramovich, who bought the London side in 2003, says the foundation is in the best position to look after its interests. He will remain as Chelsea owner, but will not be involved in any decision-making. Well, on TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Neil Oliver Live.
Thank you for all of that, Miranda, and welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. talk about a change of direction, but I suppose we do from time to time have to lift our heads up and look beyond the bleak news and talk of other things. I hear, just today in fact, that Siri, the voice of the iPhone, has been given a new, and some might say woke, persona. Users will be able to choose between 2 low-pitched, and I quote, male voices, and 2 higher-pitched female voices, and a new alternative voice which has been provided by a member of the LGBTQ+ community. Speaking only for myself, I have never had anything to do with Siri. Don't go anywhere near the chap, the person, the woman, whoever, male, female or otherwise. Words fail me, frankly. So in hopes of making sense of it, I will turn to my guests. Nick, why do they keep doing this to us? Well, do they just keep trying to wind people like myself up tighter and tighter?
Okay, so I'll give my view on this. I personally think, so, you know, from a sort of freedom perspective, if there's a market out there for people who want a sort of, I don't know, I don't even know what that would sound like, so it's difficult actually to sort of try and imagine it sonically. But if people want different voices and there's some sort of market for that, fine. I mean, I'm only upset when it's pushed on you, when you cannot, you know, if they were saying, we're getting rid of all male, female voices, and you must have this voice.
That's a fair point.
I think that's different than saying, if people want this voice, I mean, fine. Like, as far as I'm concerned, as long as there's choice involved, I'm fine.
Ingrid, am I right to characterise this as woke? Or...
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes, you are. I am so sick and tired of this. It is playing into the woke world. And, I mean, looking at the statistics, it's something like 1% of people get offended by certain things that therefore they would be sort of classed as woke. And I'm thinking, please, there's 5, this is the 5th choice now. So that represents 20%. That's not proportional representation. It makes me so angry. And yes, it is a complete wind-up. But as you rightly say, I mean, it's not being rammed down our throat, it's there. But it is doing a massive nod to that whole woke brigade, and I can't stand it.
What I think immediately is, I think it's one of the human instincts to identify whether a voice you're hearing is male or female. You can't not do that.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that whoever has recorded this gender-neutral voice for Siri, it will sound like one or the other.
Of course.
Well, of course it will.
Because everyone
because them,
work it out.
Them who has done it, or is it a they? I can't remember if this gender-neutral person...
Possibly.
Let's call it it, but let's call it it, yes. Anyway, will have been a male or a female at some point. So there has to be an influence of that gender in the voice. Unless you've got something like that. And then you wouldn't know.
Then it would just be a robot. I mean, actually, if you want to look at this from a sort of wokeness perspective, this might actually be something that slightly tears it down, because it is sort of, you're sort of slightly flying in the face of human nature. As you say, the voice will either be interpreted as male or female. You can't really avoid that.
I think to some extent the classic generated voice is the voice that we associate with Professor Stephen Hawking.
Right.
You know, that automated voice. But for me, that was also instantly identifiable
as him.
As a him,
yeah.
Even though it was an artificial creation, so I really don't get it.
Yeah, I don't know what an in-between male female. I genuinely can't picture it.
Do you make use of these things like Siri, like Alexa? You know,
yes.
These
I do
artificial
actually.
intelligences.
Yeah, it's very useful in actual fact, and you know, it's just Siri. Actually, I don't even have to say Siri, because it's worked out that I don't actually even have to alert Siri first. And I've got Siri a female English speaking.
Right.
You can choose that.
I'm so paranoid that I don't like the idea of something that's listening out for what I'm saying.
They're doing it anyway.
But so one of those things in your kitchen that you can ask to play to play music or to answer a question or whatever, is also listening all the time.
The thing about it is dealing with it. It's quite irritating. I always used to feel, when I was a kid watching Star Wars, I always used to feel bad for C-3PO when Han Solo would be mean to him. Now I completely get. Now I have empathy with Han Solo because it's so irritating trying to communicate with a robot. It's the you're like, just Alexa, no. Like you find yourself screaming at the thing because it can only understand. It misunderstands you. It mishears you.
That's so annoying.
So
that
annoying.
happens so often.
Do you think it's true? I mean, I've heard so many anecdotal accounts of people who've been having a conversation in their kitchen about, I don't know, training shoes, and then they're in the immediate aftermath, their screens are suddenly suspiciously full of adverts for training shoes, and the suspicion is that it's because Alexa or Siri has been listening and has shaped your offering accordingly.
Absolutely. Do you know? Yes, definitely, it happened to me. I was talking to somebody in where the thingy was in the kitchen. I was talking about advising the children to invest in university towns if they were going to buy a property. And sure enough, literally, I think within 24 hours, maybe 12, investment opportunities in Leeds. And at the time that I recommended, or I was going to do it, was Leeds and Newcastle. They've now been completely regenerated. So isn't that interesting? 8% return, invest in properties in Leeds. I thought, hello. What is the likelihood of that?
I'll counter with that, saying I watch a lot of... My YouTube viewing is extraordinarily all over the place. I watch like right-wing stuff, left-wing stuff, very far right, very far left, very centrist stuff, all over the place. And so I just feel like I've completely confused the YouTube metric. So I get all sorts of stuff. Like, I'm always pleased. All the ads don't apply to me at all. Like, it's all full of stuff I would never buy.
Though? Don't you get them across the span?
Well, no, because it's always trying to figure me out. So it's like lots of gambling stuff. I don't gamble at all. So lots of gambling stuff, lots of stuff for products. I'm just like, I would never be interested in this. But I always feel good about that.
Because you're interested in so many other things, they're trying to interest you in even more.
Yes, possibly that's it.
Yes.
It's nice to know that you're deeply irritating Siri.
Yes, exactly. So I feel like that's a victory.
That's what we've got to do, Neil.
Yeah. Now, moving on, and I have to say, continuing in the theme of stories that are life-affirming, a life-saving operation has been performed on a premature baby girl by surgeons who were able to practice the intricate procedure on a model of her heart generated by a 3D printer. Pippa Fulton weighed just 2 kilograms, that's 4 pounds and 10 ounces in old money, when she was born a month premature in University Hospital, Southampton, on August 6th last year. After the break, we will be meeting a dog that's been saving lives. All of that coming up. Oh no.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. A four-legged firefighter from London has been shortlisted for a prestigious national award and is on the lookout for votes, actually, to ensure he gets his paws on the prize. Simba, a 5-year-old English Springer Spaniel, is a finalist in the Kennel Club's Hero Dog Awards in the Extraordinary Life of a Working Dog category. His human is Station Officer Anton Keach. They've been partnered since 2018, and both join me now. Hello, both.
Good evening.
I have to say, I've encountered many spaniels in my life as a dog owner, and they are normally quite frantic. Simba is as cool as the proverbial.
It would appear so, yes. Oh, hello, Simba.
Oh, he's so perfect. Now tell us, what is Simba's role?
So Simba helps us investigate fires. He's trained to search what you probably call accelerants. So he helps us investigate as to whether a fire's been started deliberately or not.
Oh, so it smells fuels and petrol and others. Right. Yes. And what makes, how do you know that a dog is going to be good at such a nuanced skill?
Well, we start with dogs that are obsessed with a tennis ball. So hunting dogs, spaniels or Labradors, for example. And if they love a tennis ball, they're going to make a good search dog, because they'll do anything to find the tennis ball. And we just associate the finding the scent with getting the reward of the tennis ball.
Gosh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I can only imagine, in the fire service, that you must constantly be in the presence of harrowing scenes, or regularly in the presence of such. Is it a help to yourself and others to have a presence like Simba around?
Most definitely. So yes, we do deal with some very, very sad situations, but Simba's an unofficial therapy dog. He's very emotionally intelligent. So when he thinks, someone's a little bit upset or something stressful, he does know how to comfort people, not just myself, but anyone in the team or anyone in the fire brigade or the other working firefighters.
And is that just in him? That's not something that he's been trained to do?
Most definitely, yes. He can pick up on things straight away.
I understand he's also been instrumental in securing a murder conviction, is that right? After a particular fire in London?
Yeah, unfortunately, a few years ago, there was a gang dispute where some gang members decided to torch another gang member's family's home, and the actual sister of the family living there was due to actually returned to Syria, and the next day was killed in the fire. Very, very sad. But Simba, where we used Simba to search the scene and identify forensic evidence, which was able to assist in the conviction of two murderers and actually show how severe the fire was and the intent of those people.
Ingrid, he seems to exude a kind of calm wisdom, does he not?
Yes, completely. And you're quite right, because they're normally a little bit ditzy, aren't they, spaniels and everything, but...
he's anything but.
Anything but.
Well, he has his moments, but he knows exactly what's going on here, so he's behaving
performing?
himself. Oh, of course he is, yeah.
He's just lovely. Spaniels are used in detecting cancer in urine and different problems in urine as well, through a glass vial. So do they have extra sensitive sense of smell than other dogs?
Well, all dogs have a very keen sense of smell, but the reason why we use Cocker Spaniels, Springer Spaniels, Labradors is their drive to search.
And it's purely that?
Yeah, they want...
So interesting.
When he's searching, he's playing. So we call it work. For him, it's play.
Yeah.
And when he finds that scent, he gets a reward, and that's the best thing for him.
And what do you reward him with?
He's rewarded with a tennis ball.
Oh, literally?
Yes, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, if you gave him a treat or a tennis ball, he'd ignore the treat and take the ball.
What's the sort of what's the success rate? Are they sort of bang on all the time, or is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So their drive is to find it. So his nose is that sensitive, where they really come into their own is finding the very small traces that might be able to link a suspect to the scene. Right. You don't always need him to search the fire scene where we know there's been, let's say, a lot of petrol used.
Yeah.
But if you do what we call an area search, you might be able to find something that's got the suspect's DNA on or fingerprints, and that's where they're really useful to the police.
Right, yeah, that makes sense.
So he's not just going after, say, the smell of petrol. He's looking for all manner of scents that could be material clues.
Well, it's still linked to that accelerant because if you use it in a fire, for example, you almost certainly become contaminated. And then if you touch something else, Simba is able to still pick up that very small trace, but that thing that you touch may have your DNA or your prints on, or for example. So that's how he's able to help assist find the suspect.
What is it about dogs as a species that lends itself to doing so much for us? You know, we've long had seeing eye dogs for blind people. There's dogs that keep an eye on people who have epilepsy and are aware of the likelihood of a seizure. All manner of things that dogs seem to be simpatico with us.
The term "dog's man's best friend," and they love being part of the pack, part of the group, and yeah, he enjoys his job so much. So we, as I said, we call it work. But if I'm asking him to go out and work, it's a game to him. And the only time he gets a bit disappointed is when it's all over and we put him back in the kennel to have a rest, and so he's just braced for the next time we ask him to go out and search again.
So he doesn't live with you as...
He does.
Oh, he does?
He does. So he comes to work with me. He lives with me at home. We go everywhere together because we could be on duty, and when we're not on duty, we may be recalled to assist. Fortunately, Darren and Watson, our other part of the team, are on duty at the moment covering for us, so we can be here.
Now, I understand as well that Simba has a role as as an ambassador for the fire service. How does that shape up? Well,
as I just pointed out, there's only 2 dogs in the London Fire Brigade, and he's quite popular, as you can tell. And so he's very popular at station open days, visiting people. He breaks down barriers, so people are a bit, unsure of us, maybe unsure of the uniform. When they see Simba, he's straight in there, and then we can get our message across where we need to.
It's just extraordinary. How long will he work? Well, you've made it very clear that it's play for him, but how long will he have an active role?
Each dog is based on their own merits, but I think he's 5 now. We could easily, he'd be working for another 3-4 years before we consider him retiring. And it's a case of he'll retire back home with me anyway. So.
He would. I was going to ask that question. Yes. I just thought, please don't say that they'll take him away, because it's like, with blind dogs.
You couldn't possibly. I mean, the bond that must exist between the two of you.
Oh, yes.
Where else
trust,
would you go?
That trust as well.
Well, the colleague who we actually replaced, he had 2 dogs. So the first dog he had was eventually retired, and he had another working dog brought in, but he brought both of them to work anyway. So there was one retired, but still came along.
Oh, how lovely!
Yeah.
Now, in this category that he's in, the extraordinary life of the working dog, have you been made aware of what other dogs are?
Yes, I've met the other dogs, and in fairness, they all deserve it as well, because every dog's a hero, and every dog owner, their dog's a hero, and the other dogs, they're extraordinary dogs as well. But of course, I'm biased, and I think Simba deserves it. So if people are willing to go onto the Crufts website under the extraordinary working life of a dog Simba under Crufts, there's the option to vote for him. So there's a cheeky plug there, please.
Yeah. Fair enough.
It is special, isn't it? I mean, I just find the presence of Simba in here tonight is naturally calming, distracting in the best possible way. The merit of these animals it's just hard to express, isn't it?
Oh, it's incredible. It's not just dogs. It's, I have such an affinity with all animals, and I have got quite a strange collection. I've got a pet pig. I had 3. I've got 1 now. I cannot tell you how human they are, and you should say how empathetic he is, and reads you and judges and everything. This pig is extraordinary. It's almost more so than my dogs in a funny way. They're very sensitive. I just think they're amazing. All animals are.
Yeah. So just make it clear again how people can vote for Simba if they feel he ought to be so honoured.
Well, so on the Crufts website, if you search Hero Dog Awards, that will come up, and there'll be a choice of 5 dogs, Simba being one, of course. And if they've met Simba or have seen Simba now, I would appreciate it if they could vote for him.
Well, I have to say I feel fairly biased.
I do as well, I have to say.
As well, there's no getting away.
I've had a good lick off Simba as well.
Yeah, I think we'll all be voting for him here in the studio. Anton, thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Simba, you excellent, excellent dog.
Thank you.
Now, to move on again, a snapshot of life in Roman London has been uncovered in the 21st century shadow of the giant structure that is the Shard, the largest area of a Roman mosaic to be found in London for over 50 years. Archaeologists say it would once have decorated the floor of a Roman dining room. The site is being excavated ahead of the building of new homes, shops and workspaces, part of wider regeneration of Southwark. Joining me now to describe the find and its significance is the TV presenter and historian Dan Cruikshank. Good evening, Dan, and thank you for joining us.
Pleasure, good evening.
I've seen the pictures. I haven't visited the site, but I believe you have. Share with us your impressions.
It's compelling. I went today. I unfortunately couldn't penetrate it. It's boarded up. But I just wanted to get a sense of the location. I mean, I know the site very well. There's something always curious about the history of great cities, ancient cities like London. Things happen, of course, in layers, and often these things got an echo because I know the site well because it's quite famous as a location of the Crossbones burial ground. It's a kind of which is a bit of a mythic place, but which dates back to the 13th century. It was a burial place for the Winchester geese, which are basically harlots who had been licensed by Henry II, the king, and by the Bishop of Winchester. And they were buried there, and it becomes quite famous because it wasn't consecrated ground. And so when I read about this the other week, I was amazed that below the burials of these women, dispossessed, outcast women as they were at the time, was this amazing Roman fragment. It's more than a fragment, isn't it? And also, of course, what's interesting is that the South Bank in Roman times was quite different to North Bank. It's different in every sense, really, because it's marshy and flat. It was crossed by the great road to Dover, but this, and it was kind of not that habitable relatively. But to discover the remains of a substantial building there, and this floor is absolutely sensational. Makes it clear that living amongst the romantic marshes or occupying a building in the romantic marshes was rather high status Romans. Now, people are now saying it's a mansio, which if you know the Middle East, mansios are like caravanserais. They were government hotels for merchants. Perhaps it was sad. But looking at the imagery on this mosaic, it's absolutely the two terrific things. One, you begin to get a greater understanding about who the people were that made these objects in the Roman world. This dates kind of, well, at the moment, AD 175 to AD 200. So London goes through various phases. Probably where London is founded sort of by the Romans, I say sort of, that's a general acceptance after Roman invasion. 1843, Roman established their trading port on the Thames, and because you can cross the Thames there by bridge, and you can get your supplies up the Thames estuary. So London kind of starts, let's say, AD 43, and it has ups and downs. It's a frontier trading port initially, quite small, quite desperate. Of course, Boudicca burns it AD 61, confirming the Romans, they're right to be fearful. But after that, it becomes more solidified, it expands, becomes more cosmopolitan, richer. So this comes to, obviously towards in the second half of Roman occupation, but the South Bank always remains somewhat remote because it was marshy. So you see this wonderful object, and you begin to think, who made it? Well, what's been observed over the years about certain mosaics, pavements in this country and elsewhere in Europe is clearly they are reflecting Roman taste and Roman technologies that the use of mosaic and the classical ornament, but with clear indigenous elements. They seem to be made by a locally trained force who may be itinerant, travelling through Europe. You don't know, because the same designs pop up from place to place, but yet pushing into the Roman classical motifs, Celtic images. What was amazing about this pavement really bowled me over, because on the largest detail I saw was something called Solomon's Knot, or Solomon's seal. That is not the six-pointed star. Maybe you have an image of it there, but it's an interlocked device, which is a universal image, normally to do with, we think, symbolizing eternity, because there's a motive with no beginning and no end. It's a repeating pattern, so to speak. And you get that in Celtic art, you get it in art around the world, actually, and also in Roman art. So you get this wonderful idea. One, this is making some statement about almost like a temple, about eternity. And also you get this feeling maybe it's being made by local people, embedding their beliefs, their imagery into the Roman world. Very interesting, very moving.
Now, you made it plain that part of London would have been relatively remote from the rest of the conurbation, perhaps, in the time of its occupation. Would it be right to say that it possibly wasn't regarded as being in Roman London? Was it somewhere else?
Yeah. A very interesting observation, isn't it? Obviously, the great function is the road that goes to Richborough, which is the great triumphal entry point to Britannia in Roman times, and to Dover. And it was marshy, but of course, in the Roman world, marshland had a huge spiritual significance. It was like the large land of the around the river Acheron, River Styx, say, where the dead passed over to the underworld. And so around Roman London, on the periphery of the London, because by their regulations and rules, the dead were outside the Pomerium, which was at the boundary of the city. So this area, being marshy and looking like the underworld, ruled over by Hades, the god of the dead, was the great Roman south cemetery of Roman London. So it was a land of the dead, south of the Roman road to Dover, where this building was built, was the great cemetery. So there's kind of another overlay. And when one looks at this, the motifs, you can begin to see it. Okay, the great triclinium, that's a dining room in a big Roman house or hotel, say, but also it had almost a sense of being a temple floor. The black and white. Also, the other motif that struck me, there's the images, so it's abstract, but with some stylized floral patterns. That's kind of pretty standard. And the borders have a rope pattern. It's a sort of a galoche pattern. And that's standard detail. It's made up. It's called a twisted rope pattern. You're familiar with it, I'm sure. It's normal enough. But then the areas in between, abstract areas, are black and white tiles, so to speak. They're made out of tesserae. It's a mosaic. Of course, those black and white floors were associated with temples, particularly Egyptian temples. So again, it's really kind of interesting. This massive building, seemingly massive, was a big floor, high quality, in a funny part of Roman London, outside the boundaries, across the river, more marshy, the land of the dead. You can't help but thinking of some sort of cult aspect to this. Perhaps it was a temple. The dead. Find out.
I love this idea that it wasn't lived in as such. That it wasn't necessarily or not obviously a domestic dwelling. And you're making me think about Roman Bath. And obviously,
yes.
They were drawn to a revered spring of hot water that was already of great significance, to the people already there, and the Romans took it for themselves. So it makes you wonder if there was something watery and on the edge and in between the land of the living and the land of the dead that similarly attracted these Romans.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bath is a terrific analogy because Aquasulis, the Romans went there and they, as the Romans did, they venerated, embraced the local gods and goddesses, and they made them Romans. Aquasulis actually becomes Minerva, and so they saw the connections. They didn't, try to push away the local religions. They embraced. So, yeah, that's right. Aquasulis, the warm springs, of course, become health-giving and healing, but it's also, it is again, a watery world, as indeed was the south bank of the Thames.
Ingrid Tarrant's here with me, and I can see you being pulled closer and closer to the monitor by what's being said here. How would you respond to that idea of taking us back, 2,000 years to a different London altogether?
Dan, I love you for a start. You have captivated me. It's so romantic, isn't it? It's a time of that we just read about in history books, and then and then suddenly something new comes to light. And what I love is the way that picking it apart and investigating and analysing every little twist and it's like a murder investigation, but in a way, but it's so exciting. I love it.
It is amazing, isn't it? Oh, sorry, Dan, you go on. What were you going to say there?
Just say, by the way, one is no overacting. The object is extraordinarily rich, full of meaning, full of detail, and beautifully executed by, of course, now anonymous artists, craftsmen, men and no doubt women. And also, interestingly, the testify, the pieces, they must be imported because some of the stones, a lot of marble, the marble's not available in this colony in Roman times, so they must have come in from Rome in great sacks, and they're sorted by a local workforce, I would suggest. I mean, that's not my speculation. Most people now think that by looking at the integration of indigenous motifs with the Roman classical motifs. It is... it's two levels, isn't it? It's an indigenous work of art that's probably commemorating a sacred space, sacred before the Romans arrived. But the Romans embrace it, and then there's an overlay of neoclassical culture. So the motifs are classical motifs, but also they read as an art of the local people, of the Celts. So it's very, I said before, it's very moving to look at it. Oh, there we can see it. Oh, people, gosh, put my specs on. Sorry. There you see on the left that there is Solomon's knot, it's called, which is also called the Celtic knot. Do you see there? It's basically formed by two squares, each with semicircles. And in the ancient world, the square, the four-centred square, represents the material world, the four seasons, and so on and so forth. And the circle, again, an endless shape, represents eternity. So there it is, you see, within a lozenge.
Dan, if indeed it was a temple, if it was a sacred space, what religion, so to speak, might have been practiced there? If it was some kind of hybrid between whatever the local people were already doing and that which the Romans brought.
Yes, again, profoundly interesting. Because the other great recent find is not recently found, but recently represented, the Temple of Mithras, which was dating somewhat after the cult of Mithras is an amazing Persian god. Becomes big in the Roman Empire, particularly among the legionaries. And his temple in London dates from about AD 240 and extended. That's near Bucklersbury, near Mansion House, now on show in the Bloomberg building. Very beautiful. It is too, very beautiful presentation. So there is Mithras, but this is a little bit early, I think, for that. Very possible. So it would be a divinity. I would suspect a local god or goddess of the river, of the water, and maybe to do with the dead because of the Roman, using this. The Romans put their dead there, but they may have used it as a burial location because it had already been used as such by the people that were here before. Now, this gets into many, many questions. Was there a London before the Romans? People think not. But again, recent discoveries. I live in Spitalfields, by the way. I live on the site of the great Northern Roman Cemetery. I live just outside the Roman city, on Bishopsgate, which was Roman Ermine Street. There have been discoveries here recently which showing this area had a pre-Roman existence, seemed to be a sacred site from the Bronze Age. So there's more discoveries about the habitation of the area that the Romans made into Londinium, suggesting there was indeed a place here before, which is not surprising because it is it was a place one could kind of ford the Thames. You could ford the Thames here, and next big ford, I think, was Chelsea or traditionally Westminster. But there were ways of getting across the Thames here, so it would have made it in terms of the great ancient trade routes. I mean, the Roman roads like Ermine Street, well, they're probably pre-Roman. The Bronze Age trade routes going into Europe. This is all an area of investigation, speculation. But I'm simply saying, it's quite difficult to have these firm boundaries in one's head. One has to be relaxed, keep an open mind. Because new discoveries, there was the horse burial here found near me recently, a horse burial, which was Bronze Age, I think so, still being investigated. So again, must have think, gosh, there was a major presence in an area which one was told was the creation of the Romans. So very interesting.
Dan, I'll share this with my guests again. Nick, it's amazing how much can be gleaned about the past. In essence, we're looking at a few square meters of a floor, and yet how much Dan has been able to draw from it to create a lost world.
It's incredible that we can find something new in 2022 from Londinium. That's just amazing, and reminds us of the incredible history of London, and actually Roman Britain, which is just completely fascinating. We find something new from that is amazing.
I think as well, Dan, that it's the idea of these roads that you keep referencing. The ways not just in and out of London, but that it was a nexus at the centre of a web from which all these ways that predate the Romans, presumably, were all just passing through as well.
But you agree with it, don't you? I mean, obviously, it's kind of sort of informal speculation that it's. We know there are many ancient trade routes through Britain before the Romans, mostly with channel connections. So that's not a revolutionary idea. And to a degree, the Romans appropriate always, don't they? They take things and adapt them. And so, one can easily argue, or easy to imagine, London has quite a major identity as a nexus, as you say, before the Romans. The Romans then find it convenient to build on what was already there. It just helps one tries to read these objects to bear in mind that it could be a reflection of things far older than the Romans. The Romans appreciated and appropriated and transformed and made memorable. I think, just to reiterate what your guest said, I mean, it is absolutely amazing to find something like this, isn't it? Within the shadow of the Shard, in the heart of London. On a site, I say, which is such an odd site because it was empty for years. There's a nice pub opposite, which I often go to, and I will sit looking at this vacant site and thinking about the crossbones and the strange Winchester geese. But that's a fascinating story in itself, of course, because they were licensed. The legal stews, they were called. The money that was raised went to the Bishop of Winchester to build churches and to the Crown, and in return they regulated to a degree. And so I had all that story to ponder upon, looking at this wasteland building site, and now to be told below that, and to see 3 meters down or so. I mean, I went today to look, but I said I couldn't see more than from the street, sadly. But this idea of the richness of London is so. I'm so galvanised, isn't it? London never gives up all its secrets. And the more you look, the more you find on a daily basis. What a wonderful place.
Wonderful stuff, Dan. I could listen to you all night. You are a wonderful interlocutor and spokesman on behalf of the past and of vanished London. So thank you so much. I'm reminded constantly of a line from a Julian Barnes novel called Metroland. Yes. Objects contain absent people. I think about that all the time, and what you've been able to draw out from that mosaic floor is that very thought that we are reminded always that objects contain absent people. So thank you so much for bringing that to us this evening, and I hope our paths cross again in the future. Dan Cruikshank, historian and broadcaster. Thank you. I feel refreshed by all of that. I could have just stayed in Roman.
Me too. Yeah. I was mesmerised. I want to know about bones.
I know all the rest of it, but we must move on. We will go back to the Ukraine to see Miles again, to see what the situation is like at the moment, because that's a fast-moving situation, and we never know what might be happening as the hours pass. And also news of a significant scientific discovery with a baby shark.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Neil Oliver Live. I'm still trying to make it back to the surface after that deep dive into Roman London. A rare visitor from the deep ocean has captured the imaginations of marine biologists conducting a survey off the east coast of New Zealand's South Island. Normally found in the darkness of depths of as much as 6,000 feet, 1,800 metres, the juvenile ghost shark may provide all manner of new understanding about the species. Joining me from New Zealand to describe and to discuss the visitor is ocean scientist Britt Finucci. Hello Britt, thank you for joining me.
Hello, thanks for having me.
This is I've seen the images of this creature, and to say it's a mysterious visitor is barely the half of it. My first thought was, if it lives so deep underwater, how can this one have survived so near to the surface?
Well, unfortunately, the little individual was dead by the time it reached the surface. Coming from such depths, animals go through big changes in pressure, in temperature. So yeah, what we did see is it was actually dead at the surface. Right. So unfortunately, yeah, the little guy wasn't alive.
Now, what is it a true shark? I see that the species has other names besides, but are we dealing with a true shark?
It's a relative of your true, stereotypical bitey sharks like great white sharks. As a whole, sharks are part of a group called chondrithians. So these are cartilaginous fish, as opposed to your bony fish, which are known as teleos. So within the cartilaginous fish, you have your true sharks, you have rays, and then you have ghost sharks, which, as you mentioned, are known by a whole bunch of different names. Chimeras is another one, ratfish. But yeah, ghost shark seems to be the one that everyone likes to stick with.
And what size is a full-grown example of the species?
They can get quite big. If this little individual is the species I think it might be, it could get to 1.5 meters when they're fully grown. One of the biggest ghost sharks that we know of is called the giant chimera, and that species is found around New Zealand and Australia. And I have seen individuals that are just as big as me, so you're pushing near 2 meters in length.
And given that these creatures live at such depths down there in the darkness, I suppose, how much do we know about their lives, about their breeding practices and what they feed on and all of it?
Very little. For most species, a lot of ghost sharks, they are known by one individual. What's great about having this little guy is that for a lot of these deep sea species, the only thing we do know comes from adults, because adults are bigger. We tend to come across them a little bit more. So finding a little individual, and what makes this finding so special is that we are going to be able to learn more about smaller size of ghost sharks. And we know from some of the more better studied species that little ghost sharks, they can live in different places from the adults. They can eat different things. They live at different depths. And sometimes they just look very different as well. So we know one species, it's near black in color as a little juvenile, but when they get to be adult size, they actually become a really purple color and have different kind of, shapes with their fins and their face. So yeah, this will give us some more insight into the first thing we've got to do is actually figure out what species we're looking at. We've got to take some genetics and some additional measurements of the body and stuff. But once we do figure that out, that will give us an indication more of just the overall biology and ecology of this species.
Was there great excitement when it, when it came to light? Dead though it was, was it, to encounter one of these, was it quite a moment on the survey vessel?
For me, yes. I do a lot of work on ghost sharks. I got really excited when I saw this because I knew it was such a rare find. Can't say the same with the rest of my crew. We have regular arguments over, which fish species is best. But after all this attention, the little baby ghost shark got, I think it's a clear and obvious answer that ghost sharks are better.
And in total, how much information can you get? How much can you learn about the species from just this single juvenile? How much more will you know?
A little bit. It's not going to answer all our questions, but like I said, some of these species are only known from one specimen. So, having two just doubles our sample size. So yeah, once we do figure out what species it is, then we can go from there and we can figure out what we're going to do with it. Once we've taken, the measurements and genetics that we want to look at, we will deposit the individual in our national museum. So it will be available for anyone and everyone in the future who wants to study ghost sharks. So it will be a very valuable contribution to our natural history.
Britt Finucci, an amazing glimpse of an otherwise invisible world. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Now, it's been hard for us all to escape the news from Ukraine this week. But as mentioned earlier in the show, one Brit is trying to do the exact opposite. Miles Routledge, a 22-year-old physics student, has a history of flying out to war zones. And there he is. Hello, Miles. You're still with us, but I notice it's dark. Is that your own doing, or is there a power cut in Kyiv?
Yeah, so currently I'm in a bomb shelter in the bottom of a hotel. We got evacuated a little bit earlier by the staff saying there's a warning going on. And I think we've lost power. And the sad thing is the only way out is to the left of me, an elevator, which runs on electricity, which we don't seem to have. So it looks like we're stuck down here for the night anyway.
Is anyone else with you? Are you alone in this bomb shelter?
So in the other room, there's about 20 other people, all ranging from elderly babushkas that are suffering from cancer at the moment and just want to get home to their neighbouring countries, to 20-year-old freelancers, to professional tennis players of all people. It's a great variety, but everyone here is a little bit tired and everyone just wants to sleep, basically.
Miles, I have two guests with me here in the studio. Ingrid Tarrant, I think we were discussing your adventure, your predicament, while we were away from you. I think, Ingrid, you might want to commune with a kindred spirit, no?
Well, Miles, the question that Neil asked me was, what do I think about you being there, whatever? And I think it's great, and I would actually quite like to join you. And I'm not saying that in a ghoulish way, but I really, you're quite a one-off, and I think this is really interesting. I want to ask you something. I don't know how much you're seeing of the present news that we are getting now. How much is really happening? And dare I say, how much is propaganda, or how much are we being, how much is being kept away from us? Can you get a take on that at all, from where you are there and us here?
Yes, so back home, it's basically cut and dry, with Ukraine being the good guys and Russia being the bad guys. Now, I'm 100% pro-Ukraine, I've got to say, but there are some bad issues going on the Ukrainian side. There's footage going around on Ukrainian social media of some families trying to get out, drive out of the country to safety, with young children and everything. However, Ukrainian militants, either private or state-owned, are dragging men out of their cars, trying to leave and forcing them to basically pick up arms against their will. So they're being dragged across the ground. In the video, there's blood, dragged across the tarmac and cement. So it's a pretty rough situation. I think everyone's getting a bit desperate. The curfew as well that hits recently, it's enforced from 5 p.m. where I am right now. So it's 11 p.m. where I am, and it's until Monday at 8 a.m. So no one can go outside for a few days. And the people that need critical infrastructure, I'm getting messages of people in the Eastern blocs that don't actually have any medicine, elderly people, vulnerable people, disabled people. They're screwed, and they try to go out their doors, and the Russians and the Ukrainians just aren't letting them go. So it's really a stalemate, and no matter whose side you're on, you've got to admit the average civilian is so the average civilian is really screwed over in this situation. I hope the best for them. The situation's getting worse and worse. We're hearing gunshots, we're hearing bombings, and they're getting closer and closer.
That's quite a harrowing insight you've brought to us, Miles. And I think apart from anything else, it only intensifies my concern from you. So I wish you all of the best, and just continue to take care of yourself and those around you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, that's all from me on Neil Oliver Live tonight. And my thanks, as always, to my panel, to Ingrid Tarrant and to Nick. Thank you so much for being with me. And to all of my guests this evening. It's been enlightening for me, I hope so for you. I'll be back same time next week. Now, it's Mark Dolan tonight, and I'll see you soon.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry for most, but with rain and strong winds moving into the northwest. Let's take a look at the details. A dry evening and night for Plymouth and southwest England, with plenty of clear spells. Staying on the windy side, especially over high ground and along northern and western coasts. For London and southeast England, it will also be a breezy, dry and clear evening with little in the way of cloud in the sky. It's a similar story for Cardiff and South Wales, although a windier evening here than further east, especially over hills and coasts. Temperatures this evening will be around 5 to 7 degrees Celsius. A dry evening with clear skies for Birmingham and the West Midlands. Again, it will be on the breezy side, but overall it will remain settled with temperatures of 5 to 7 degrees Celsius. More of the same across northeastern England, with dry and clear conditions dominating, some breezy or windy conditions at times, and evening temperatures in the range of 5 to 8 degrees Celsius. A largely dry evening for southern Scotland, although with broken or overcast cloud persisting for most. The best of any clear spells across northern and eastern areas, temperatures of 6 to 8 Celsius. Across the Irish Sea, it'll be a cloudy evening for Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland will keep the cloud and southerly winds, allowing for mild conditions to persist overnight. Tomorrow staying dry across most of the UK, but with rain and strong winds edging into the northwest and far west overnight. And that's how the...
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on